Hi, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I'm very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She has a family and real estate law firm in the Worcester area, and she and her team are fantastic. And today we're going to be talking about something very valuable, both in your keeping your sanity and in your wallet, how to shorten a trial process or anytime someone takes you to court, not necessarily a trial, not yet anyway. If you want to try to avoid that, we're going to come up with some great ideas for you. And thank you so much for coming on today, Nicole. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So let's get into this. I mean, I think one of the most annoying things about going through either a divorce or a separation from your partner and you've got either kids involved or real estate or whatever it is the amount of time it takes. And even when you've settled something, you're back in court and it's just shocking. Do you see this happen a lot?
I see everyone getting frustrated all the time. I don't think a lot of the times the delays are unreasonable. Each court has a tracking system which says from start to finish, it should be this amount of time. That should be a guideline to you. And unfortunately, a lot of attorneys don't explain that tracking system to the clients. So I think the clients are coming in with unrealistic expectations because they want to have a one and done. They see on TV, hey, you got a hearing, you have a criminal case and you're in front of the judge 2 weeks later for the trial. And we're just sitting there laughing. The attorneys are like, no, that doesn't happen. But I think, people don't really know how long things really take. I mean, maybe if you watch like 48 hours or Real ID, they'll actually give you a little bit of time frame. But other than that, you really have no idea. So first thing, ask your attorney what the tracking order looks like. What's that time frame? What am I supposed to be looking at so that I can know whether or not it's unrealistic? Because all too often, people don't have that expectation. I mean, I put right in my fee agreements, your average time for a divorce is 2 years. And they go, what? Well, let me explain the process. And then I explain it and they go, oh, okay. I mean, they don't like it, but at least now it sets their expectations so that when they're on year one, they're not screaming and yelling at me. And I'm going, wait a minute, you knew about this. And I remind them, sometimes I have to remind them of that, but I think that's really what you have to look at is what is that expectation to start with? And I think once you get that and it's 2 years, and if you're happy and hey, I got divorced in a year or I got it finished in a year and a half, you're going to be much more happier when it's shortened. Obviously, it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I figure it's kind of like the DMV. You go in there and you sit down and you don't know, or you might get sent through the line 5 times. Last time I had to deal with something at the DMV, it took 3 days and 8 total hours. And I was like ready to kill myself. But yeah, same thing with the divorce court. It takes a long time. What are some of the things that hold it up though?
The holdups are usually either the parties, one's not willing. So again, if we're talking about a divorce, you both have to say your marriage is over. And if one person's going, no, I know I'm going to get back together with him. I know he's going to drop this whole lawsuit. Well, if you don't have that expectation, and again, I can tell you what's going to happen because we're in no fault state. But again, if you honestly believe you can win him back, and some people have, but if you honestly believe that, then you're not going to be in the right frame of mind and you're going to do everything in your power to delay. What that's going to translate to is money, money, money. Thank you very much. So you have to be understanding of what your expectations are. I think the other part of that is, again, you have somebody that's delaying because I don't want to show you my books. I don't want to tell you what it looks like. I don't want to give you those documents. I know that I have an account in the Cayman Islands, but I don't want you to find that out. It's those types of things that you really have to dig. And so if I'm not giving you the records or I'm giving you incomplete records, you can't find it. Ha, 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 ha. Well, from our perspective, I'm going, great. I'm going to keep asking. I'm going to keep doing things. And I'm going to keep subpoenaing people because I need to have those records. Because I'm not doing my job for you if I don't have them. So it's again one thing that's going to delay it. So it's if people are being responsive and if people are really willing to get the process moving, then absolutely it goes a lot smoother when we have the documents, we exchange it, we know what we need, let the attorneys do their job, and then we can fight over what's fair and reasonable.
Well, you mentioned a whole bunch of headaches in that last statement. And it's so hard because it takes so long to get anything done in court. Like, and you're reasonable about it. You know that it's going to take X amount of time. But then sometimes you get to certain stops where well, this is what's supposed to happen now, and then your ex might drag their feet because they're in love with you, or they don't want to show you the books, or they're going to give you everything out of order and incomplete, and then you've got to figure it out, and you've got to figure out what's missing, and it's very frustrating. And like, I know that sometimes you have to hire somebody that is not your attorney, somebody like a financial person to come in and look at it, because that might not be your field of expertise, and you might not know what you don't know, which you probably don't. So, forensics accountants, for example, sometimes you don't have to spend $10,000. Sometimes you spend a few $1,000s and they can find something in their first sweep over the records, and they can tell you what's missing and where to look. So, I mean, what are some of the things that you find helps when people are stalling and trying to pull some trickery and keeping things in court as long as they possibly can?
I definitely think, hiring the right people for the right job, all too often people will go, I just don't agree with that house value. Okay, well, then let's get an appraisal. Well, I don't want to do a joint one. Okay, fine. I'll do mine. You'll do yours. At the end of the day, the judge is going to order it sold. Same thing with a forensic accountant. I'll hire mine. You hire yours. They're going to obviously be able to look at different numbers in a different way and come up with much better things than I could ever come up with because I'm not a forensic accountant. So those are things, any expert that you can hire, if you have medical issues, you want to hire an expert. Sometimes you need to have a vocational expert because they refuse to work or they're underemployed and they're self-employed, but they're not making any money. So all of these experts we go to and we go, let's hire them because they're going to prove that, you know, David is only working and making, $500 a week as a master electrician and he's been doing it for 30 years. Well, that's not normal. I mean, we all can kind of see that. So again, we want to see what they're really hiding and how that impacts us. So from my perspective, it's knowing what information I can get myself and then finding the right resources to hire third parties to do what they need to do. Now, obviously, the other part of that is I just don't have the money, Nicole. I can't afford to do this. So again, I'm going to go with, well, let's look at it together, separate, but look at it together. I'm going to look at it with my eyes. You're going to look at it with your eyes. We're going to see what we can come up with. If you can't afford an expert, I'm going to tell you the pros and cons of not hiring an expert, but I certainly will respect you for that. But then let's sit down and have a four-way meeting and let's see what we can come up with. We just had dual appraisals on one of my deals right now, and we're literally between the two appraisals $20,000 off. Really, we don't really need to go to trial on this. We know who's keeping the house. Let's figure out another way. There's other assets to offset. So it becomes a cost effective analysis. And so definitely sit down, have a mediation, have a four-way conversation, negotiate with the attorneys, do something to move that progress forward, because otherwise, if you don't have the money, you're kind of stuck. The judge is going to make a decision, and ultimately, if it's an asset that can be sold, like a house, they're going to order it to be sold. And if you want to keep the house, you can't afford that because you just said you wanted to keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it just means you have to dig in and do the work yourself. I mean, if you've got all of those records, you can go through them, Friday night. When you get a chance, go through them and look for something suspicious. There might be large cash withdrawals on a regular basis. And that's enough for your attorney to ask the other side, well, what happened to this money. If you can't account for it, then that's marital income. Or, if you're married, if it's another kind of case, then obviously there's still things you can do. But it's good to ask the questions, and it's good to take a look for yourself, because sometimes you're the only one that's really going to see something that's out of whack.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the attorneys are going to look for, are they going to liquor store obsessively? Are they going to casinos? Are they, going to a gas station and every single thing ends in an even number? Well, that tells me that they're paying ATM and they're getting them withdrawal and they're doing lottery tickets. So there's certain things that we as attorneys kind of know. You can obviously see the food purchases, so you can see things like that. But again, if you're going to say, hey, look, Nicole, we've never been to the restaurant, or hey, he refuses to eat Chinese with me, and now he's going to all these Chinese restaurants, guess what? I'm not going to know that. That's going to be something that's personal to you guys. So that's why I ask the clients to take a look at it, because you're going to know something specific that says, this doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't make sense because of X, Y, and Z. Why would he go to that Walmart when there's one that's right next door to our house? Again, I don't know. I don't know these things. So I always defer to the clients because they do have different eyes and they're looking for different things than I am. And obviously, I'm going to look at the big ticket items, but maybe the big ticket item was something important. Maybe it's, Christmas, maybe it's a tuition bill, things of that nature. I can follow a lot of those things, but again, I'm not going to know the specifics.
I mean, that's really important. It's important to know that you're going to have to put the time in, and that it does pay off in the long run, because it gives you negotiation power. So, what are some of the other things that will lengthen the time that it takes to settle a case?
Sometimes it's just the judge. Sometimes you'll have a case where you're trying to settle, other parties going, no, not so much, I'll just wait, because they're getting a high amount of child support, or they're getting an alimony award on a temporary basis and it's substantial, or they're getting health insurance they know that they're going to lose when the divorce is final. So things of that nature, and you just happen to have a judge that is behind and their trials are a year backed up. And you're going, Nicole, what can you do? I'm going, nothing, nothing. All I can do is try to settle your case. I can work toward settling your case. I can work toward conciliation or mediation or a four-way or something of that nature, but I can't make the judge's calendar go any faster. And so that to clients is very frustrating, but I don't have any control. And then the worst part is, just this week we had a court closure. So all those people that had hearings that day, they're all pushed back. I don't have any control over snow. I don't have any control over court closures. So it's just one of those fluky things that, nobody ever blames me for it, but they're all like, but Nicole, I'm like, I don't know how to fix that. All I can do is, again, draft up a separation agreement, send it off to opposing counsel. Let's work through this so that when we are going into court next time, we hopefully have an agreement.
I mean, that's a really good point. And I know that some of the other things that can happen, that has happened to me, where you get a new date, it's 6 months out, and then somebody has to move the date. And a lot of times, I mean, it might be true. Maybe somebody did have like a death in the family, or they're very sick. People get sick, but sometimes it's, oh, neither one of us are going to be there for that day. Well, you had this date. And then, if you do reschedule it, it's out another 6 months. It could be 9 months to a year even. It's crazy how that can happen. Now, I know that you have some really good tips and some good strategies for kind of keeping them in their place. And part of it is, being polite and working together. And if you're not going to do that, so why don't you, I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, I think it depends on, again, what the reasoning is and what the basis. Sometimes it's just, hey, I want to do it because my client just told me he was on vacation. Well, I don't care. We got the notice 6 months ago. Sometimes it is an emergency. So obviously, if it's an emergency, we're going to accommodate. But we're also going to hopefully put that in a pleading, let the clerk know that, look, we've already got this pushed out. We've waited this long. Can we get an expedited date? We can obviously go in on a short order notice if it's some cases. And again, certain courts, short order notice means, hey, I'll give you the notice in 3 months. But other courts, like if I go into Worcester and I get a short order notice and they find that it's palatable, then they're going to issue that, and I'm going to go in the next 2 weeks. So again, depends on your court, depends on how backed up the courts are, but certainly, and what type of motion it is. Obviously, if you know the clerks and you know the case managers, you can get a lot farther. So that's the biggest thing is, sucking up to the court staff so that you can get this accomplished. The other part of that is, again, the other party has to be willing to go, yep, I'm agreeable to this, this, and this. So those are the kind of the key focuses. And again, as a pro se litigant, you're never going to get that attention. You're never going to know who to talk to. You're never going to be able to, facilitate that. And they're just going to give you the next date off the list.
I was going to say that. And if you need help with anything that has going to court for anything, absolutely give Nicole and her team a call because they're fantastic and they do this every day and they know the people in the court and sometimes they can make things happen a little quicker just by knowing who they are. And if you have a good reason to speed things up, then and they can do it, then they will. If you have the right person representing you, and that is so important.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is, again, knowing what that policies are for that, for that courthouse, for that clerk's office, for whatever that is. And we have to juggle it. We know that Worcester is different than Norfolk, that's different than Middlesex, and each one of them has different procedures, different clerks to talk to, different things of that nature. And we need to get to the right person. And then you talk to land court and they have a whole different system there. So each courthouse and each judges are going to have different systems. Again, attorneys are going to know because we do this day in and day out.
So are there things we can do, just you and your attorney, to help move things along and get things set? Because sometimes you hear about people that have this long process in place and then all of a sudden they've got an agreement like magic. And I know that like sometimes people are incredibly surprised when it happens too, because that they might have a really the couple might have a terrible relationship and might have been fighting at every single step of the process. So tell us what happens when that magic settlement comes through.
And it's funny that you say that because that's exactly how the court looks. They're like, wait a minute, we got an agreement on this? Really? Oh my God. And they're just as excited as we are. And because they can kind of know, like, these cases are, what's that case again? Oh, and and the file gets bigger and bigger and bigger and they can't wrap their hand around it. And they're like, oh. So they're ecstatic. I mean, the reality is, if it's a divorce, we will have to go in front of the judge. Can we move it up? Yes. Again, depending on your court, but in Worcester County, I can see when that judge is on that bench, doesn't matter if they're having a trial, doesn't matter what's going on that day, as long as the judge is in that courthouse that day, we can walk it in. We don't even need an appointment. Look at that, magic. And I basically go downstairs in the file room, grab the file, go upstairs, hand it to the clerk and go, here you go. And the parties submit their thing. We do the colloquy, which is just the judge saying, you've read this, you've signed it, you signed it freely and voluntarily, going over the terms of the agreement, and then blessing the divorce. In a modification, chances are we might not even have to see the judge. Because again, we can write in specific language that says the following, and then, okay, now the judge is going to automatically approve it. Again, judge specific, court specific, but there are things that we can do that we don't even need to see the judge. We file it, we submit it to the clerk, we let the clerk know. The clerk goes, okay. And then the clerk gives it to the judge who blesses it, and lo and behold, you don't even have to go to court. So when we have that magic agreement, believe me, everybody in the courthouse is just as happy as you are. They want to get it done. They want to get it approved. They want to get it off their desk. One less file that they have to look at.
Absolutely. And that's one less thing that everyone has to think about. It's frustrating. I know as a client, it's hard. It's emotional every time you have to go through. You wish that you get through the divorce and then that's it. But now you have to keep going back to court for years sometimes. Some people go to court until their kids graduate. I mean, have have you please tell me you don't really have cases like that.
Okay, I won't tell you anything. But the reality is, I do. I have cases that are not even done after the children graduate. Because now we just went through, 20 years of a marriage, and the kids are emancipated, but now one of the parties are looking for alimony. Congratulations! You now get another 10, 20 years with this spouse that you have to deal with.
Ask for alimony after you've had all of that child support. I've never heard of that.
It all depends on the length of the marriage. So, yes, it's something that the court can consider, and they're going to look at the separation agreement and see whether or not it is something that the court can honor. But in a long-term marriage is over 20 years, yes, you could be looking at lifetime alimony.
That's a lot. I mean, I guess it never ends for some people. They are just always going to be tied. So be careful when you're out there dating. And you know what? Have a prenup. I mean, how many people do have prenups that help this process? I mean, and does it help a ton to have that all set up ahead of time?
It certainly helps. Not enough people have it. I can certainly tell you that. I would say, on average, I probably get 5 prenups a year that I see people actually using them in the divorce. So again, sometimes I do prenups and I never hear back from them, and hopefully they're happily married and they never get divorced. But of the ones that I've seen that I've done through the divorce side of it, like I said, I get about 5 a year. And that's really sad when you think about the fact that I do probably, 400 divorces a year. Do that math. See what that fractional value is. So a lot of people don't do it because they don't need to. Now, again, are they going to be held valid? That's a whole separate story. That's a whole separate topic for another day. But at the end of the day, it really depends on a lot of factors. So you won't know if you don't get one. I can guarantee you that. And will it address the children? No. So, if you're young and you say you have no money and you have no assets, and then you have 5 children with him, and by the time you get divorced, you have all these assets, well, it might not have been applicable. But again, you won't know if you don't bother to take the time and meet with an attorney over it.
It's interesting you say that because when I was dating, I was on a website for it was called Elite Singles, and all of the men I went out on dates with were still married, trying to go through a divorce, didn't want to finish it because they either had trusts that their soon to be exes were trying to get into. They had prenups that were being attacked, and it was just the process was even longer. Do prenups make the process longer?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it has an impact, but generally you're going to follow along the same path. So I haven't noticed any delays. Maybe it's the delays because one party doesn't want to honor the prenup, or one party says that, I should get more than the prenup says. Again, I think you need to look at that document, and I think we need to figure out if it's realistic.
And that's really good. I mean, hopefully you have a great attorney getting those prenups together and there's not a lot of loopholes left in there. And I know that that's something that you help with, and you make sure that it's going to be something that can be used later, because why go through the trouble of putting it together if it's not going to be done right? So don't try to do it yourself.
Definitely not.
Well, I want to thank you so much for having us today and giving us all this information. It's certainly something that should be of interest to everyone trying to get a trial quicker, get the settlement quicker, um, because it's a lot less stress and a lot less money in the long run. And if you are worried about spending money on an attorney, let me tell you, you're going to be spending a lot more money if you try to do it yourself. And I'm sure you've seen that, haven't you?
Not only are you spending a lot more money, but you're also going to be losing a lot more money because you don't know what you're entitled to. And you think things are going to play out a certain way. And then you're like, oh, okay, because the other attorney said that this is the way it is. So it must be, because the other attorney would never, like, tell you something different. Guess what? We don't have an obligation to you. So, trust the system. Yes, the judge isn't going to prove something that's so lopsided. But again, attorneys are going to be able to go, oh, yeah, but this is a little bit different. And, they're going to be able to write it so that in such a way that the court is going to look at it and go, yes, I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, my first divorce was my only divorce. The first attorney that my ex had asked me why I even needed an attorney. We're good friends, and it was such an amicable divorce. Why would I need representation? Of course, you know, I was the only one that wasn't an attorney in the room. I was very happy to have you with me because I had no idea what was going on. It was, a lot of new laws, a lot of new, rules and paperwork, and learning what the process is and where you have to be when and what you need to get. It's a lot. It's a lot. And thank God I had you to help me through that process. And I'm sure most of your clients are saying the same thing because it's a definitely one of the most difficult types of law, I would think, because of all of the emotions.
The emotions definitely run high. And we see that. And again, it's one of those things that I have to go, calm down. It's okay. We'll be okay. We'll get through it. Shh, okay. Don't worry about it. And it's amazing because my clients are like, why didn't you bring that up? And I just had this the other day where my client was like, we were so losing the judge like hated us, and then you turned it around with that last sentence, and I'm like, well, that's what you're paying me for. But again, I kind of know, like, I can see what the judge was thinking, and I can see where she was going with this, and so I threw out this, and all of a sudden the judge looked at the other person and goes, ma'am, is that true? And she said yes, and then it was just evil eyes at the other party, and it was all off of us. And my client was thrilled with it. And again, that's because we know what's going to drive a judge. We know the keywords to look for. We know what to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank God for that. And thank you so much for coming on again. I know we went on a tangent. We were closing out, but there's always something interesting to learn from you. And so thanks for extending it out. We thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you all have a great weekend.